Hi, I'm Dan, Senior PD Trainer at ViewSonic, and I'm here to help you set up your EDLA ViewSonic panel. Now, I have the 51 series behind me, but this video also applies to our 52 2ED and our 53 series. Chances are when you get your panel, it might need a firmware update. And so there's a couple ways we can do this. One is if you turn on your panel, there will be a setup process that will take you through. You can connect the panel to the network and download the OTA update. However, this can be a little time consuming because it's got to download the firmware and then install it for each panel. You can also put the firmware on a flash drive. If you go to the website vsfinch.es/firmware, we have the files and directions on how to download it to your flash drive. Once the firmware is on your flash drive, you're going to want to take it, put it into the front of the panel in the USB port, and now we need to completely shut the panel off. The way I like to do this is find the power switch on the bottom of the panel, turn it off, turn it back on, and then I'm going to hold down the power button. And I'm just going to keep holding this power button until I see the update screen. Now you can see that the firmware is updating. You want to make sure you leave the flash drive in. Also, do not unplug or turn off the panel until it's finished. Now, if you're ever updating the firmware and something happens, power goes out, or it fails and you need to restart the panel, you may not get any information on the display anymore because the firmware is kind of corrupt. The panel's still usable. You need to turn it all the way off and then hold that power button down. However, you won't see anything on the screen, so sometimes it's helpful to connect an external monitor to the HDMI out on the side of the panel, which then will visually show you what's happening on the panel, even if you don't see anything. But again, that is only if something goes wrong with the firmware update, either you lose power or it failed and you needed to try it again. Another thing I'd like to point out, anytime you see the power button flashing really fast, blue, red, that's just another indicator that it's installing firmware. Again, in case the screen is not showing anything, this button here is showing us that it is actually in fact updating. Once the firmware is finished installing, the panel will reboot on its own and then take us to the setup screen. Note that the firmware update process takes somewhere between 6 to 10 minutes. Note that during the firmware update process, the panel might reboot a couple times as it finishes up. But once it's finished, you'll get the boot screen and then it will take us back to the setup screen, which we'll see here in just a second. Now that we're at the setup screen, let's go through how to quickly set up the panel. You're going to want to start the setup process. It will ask you to join a network. You're welcome to connect the panel to a network at this point. However, it does increase the length of the setup process, so we normally recommend setting up the panel offline, which skip joining a network. It will also skip the Google account creation process because it's very important that we don't connect a Google account to the panel during the initial setup. So we're going to go ahead and continue here. Just ignore the time zone for now. We can click next. Go ahead and accept the Google services like location and updates. And then you're going to need to create a PIN code. This is going to secure the panel, or what we call the owner account. So decide what you would like it to be. We're going to keep ours simple, but don't copy us. You will need to enter it twice. Notice that I can also use the return button here instead of the confirm button to accept or approve my PIN code. Now on this screen, this is for my ViewBoard Manager. It's very important that we leave this box checked if you would like to be able to do classroom communication or manage the panel remotely from the My ViewBoard Manager console. We're going to select the next button down here. And then on this screen, this is going to help us choose our boot mode. For most people, we're going to use normal mode because we want to be able to use the apps and casting and different tools on the panel. However, there might be scenarios where you want to disable the Android side. We have a separate video on how to disable the Android side. So we're going to leave it on normal, select next. So on this screen, we need to decide if we want to enable what's called the ViewBoard launcher. Now, if you are using your EDLA panel and you want to be able to use Google Apps like the Google Play Store and Google Drive and sign in with your Google account, we're not going to want to use the ViewBoard launcher. The ViewBoard launcher is for a more simplified experience where you're just using, say, ViewSonic tools like the My ViewBoard software or AirSync for casting. So we're going to not select the ViewBoard launcher because we want to set this up using what's called the Google launcher, because we are going to use Google Apps. But we do need to accept the ViewBoard terms. We will click Finish, and what it's going to do is it's going to finish the setup, and it's going to immediately take us to what we call the owner account.